What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Welcome back to Off the Schneid. It's mock draft Saturday. Don't do a lot of weekend episodes. Real life kind of gets in the way sometimes. I had to push the episode twice. I was trying to do it on Thursday night, then Friday night. Something come up. It is what it is. You gotta be nimble. You gotta stick and move. But here we are, Saturday afternoon. Hopefully, you guys are sitting around at home and have time to kill. Want to chat some NFL draft stuff. I couldn't be more excited to do this episode. I put in a lot of work into this episode, scouring the interwebs, scouring Twitter, listening to and watching interviews, combine interviews, player interviews, GM interviews, all this kind of stuff. Take all the information I can, put it all together, take a look at the depth charts, which we'll go through while we're making these picks, and just kind of suss out what I think teams are going to do, what they should do. And if I'm being honest, I think this is going to be a wild draft this year. I think it's going to be insane. There's so much talent. There's so many needs. There's, so much top end offensive talent, which is rare. We could see top 10 picks all being offensive players, which is extremely rare. A lot of obviously quality wide receivers, quarterbacks at the top. I think it's going to be wild. And to be honest, of course, I'm going to be wrong in this. A lot of people are going to be wrong when they're doing their mock drafts, especially this year. I think it's going to be wild. I think if you get, 8 picks right, realistically, I think if I do a good job of honing in on what I think teams are going to look to add and positions that they're going to add, then I'm going to give myself a pat on the back, because I think this draft is going to be nuts. And I cannot wait for it. We're less than a week away, Thursday night. I'm excited. Let's jump into this. This might be a bit of a longer episode, so let's jump right in. Let's dig into the 2024 Off the Schneid NFL Mock Draft 1.0. I only do one. This is the one and only, so let's get into it. So we're doing this on, we'll do it on PFF because it's the best. I don't know. It's just the best way to do it, in my opinion. You can see trades and everything like that. So we'll put 2 rounds, but we're not going to obviously do 2 rounds. We'll just do the first round here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Let's zoom in, get this looking good. Boom, boom. All right, let's kick it off. So it's obvious with this, so I'm not going to dig too much into this first pick. Take a look at the depth charts. I use ourlads.com. It's a fantastic site if you're looking for depth chart stuff. Big reason why I like it as well, it shows the players that have come in free agency, rookies, whatnot, what year they were drafted. It shows everything, just kind of a good snapshot. So this is the site I use. So obviously, the biggest hole in this team, quarterback, they're going to be addressing quarterback. It's going to be Caleb Williams. The biggest thing with this pick, the biggest, concern that the GM, head coach, all the decision makers with this or any team, realistically, with the first overall pick. And there's lots of, red flags that people have for Caleb Williams. I get it. But, the consequences are much more, dire if you don't pick him, much like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud last year. That cost Frank Reich his job, whether it was a decision or not, which I feel like it was not. At least I hope it was not. And it cost him his job. So, if they don't select Caleb Williams, he goes to Washington and absolutely lights it up, rookie of the year, that kind of thing, then everybody in the Chicago Bears franchise is going to lose their job. So it's just a matter of, they're going to extend their own contracts by making this selection. You're going to get at least 2 years, 2 full seasons with Caleb Williams as your quarterback to see if he's the guy before they're going to see about moving on from you. It is what it is. If you're wrong, it is what it is. And as far as trading out, it's just not going to happen. It was much like when my Bengals had the first pick with Joe Burrow on the board. It just didn't make sense. I wouldn't have taken 5 first-round picks for Joe Burrow. I said that at the time, and I stick by it now. Publicly, I said that there's no way the Miami Dolphins were the team in that year that had 3 first-round picks in that draft class. And then if they threw two successive years of first-round picks, I wouldn't have taken it. And I think the Bears are looking at it the same way. So there's no need to dig too much into this. It's Caleb Williams first overall. That's the most obvious, pick in this whole class right now. And then it starts. Then it kind of starts. There's been some ups and downs about who the Commanders are going to take. Obviously, for me, again, quarterback is the need here, which is why I very much do not see the Commanders trading out of this spot. I don't see them moving down. There's no point. You need a quarterback. You obviously cannot go into the season with Marcus Mariota, Jeff Driscoll. They did a good job of addressing the O-line in free agency. They addressed the defense with Dan Quinn coming in, added a couple of former Cowboys, obviously. Look at all the kind of teal green or whatever you want to call this on the defensive side of the ball. Bobby Wagner comes in, Frankie Louvu. So they added some pieces to this defense. It's in a good spot. The offensive line could still use some help, namely at left tackle, obviously. Cornelius Lucas there. But Nick Allegretti comes in. Tyler Biadasz comes in. Andrew Wiley should be able to get the job done, and hopefully you can get something out of Sam Cosme, whether that's at left tackle or not, but you hope he can start somewhere. And then a couple, third round, fourth round pick from last year that can be depth guys. So, yeah, they're in a good spot, to be honest. I like their weapons, Terry McLaurin, Jahad Dotson. I like their weapons. They're definitely going to have to add a piece at some point in this draft, but it's a deep wide receiver class. So it's always going to be quarterback for this team. Let's get that off the table. And I've been saying since day one, last year I was wrong about CJ Stroud going first overall. I think they absolutely should have taken him first overall. Obviously, we're sitting here now knowing my best ball drafts had lots of Carolina Panthers stacks with CJ Stroud. So I like to, give myself an edge if I'm right. And I've been drafting Jaden Daniels like he's going to be the Washington Commanders quarterback since the start of the offseason. So I'm not wavering. The betting odds are there. It sounds like he's the pick. I'm sticking with it. It makes the most sense, and that's a great selection in my opinion. So the Washington Commanders, second overall, go ahead and draft Jaden Daniels, quarterback of the future. Again, that's not breaking too much ground here. I think that those two picks are pretty well set in stone. I think Drake May could be in play there, absolutely. But I think it's between Daniels and May. And then, again, the draft could start here potentially. There's been rumblings of Marvin Harrison Jr. being the selection, maybe a trade out. I got a comment here, Jeff Demare. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name there. The Vikings are trading up to number 3 for May and May only. 3 first to be offered. They love him. Yeah, that's possible. But in my opinion, the Patriots have been, obviously they're drafting quarterback. Okay. If they're sitting there, we know that they're going to draft quarterback. If they stay, if they trade out, then who knows? But the Patriots have been sitting there losing in the AFC East for the last few seasons, obviously since Tom Brady left, right? They've been losing to which team? The Buffalo Bills. So they've been playing against Josh Allen for the last 6 years. You got to see some similarities there between Josh Allen and Drake May. Gerard Mayo is supposedly super impressed with May. He's a lot of people's, QB2. Not for me. He is my QB3. So this is where I would have him going if they're going to stick and pick, which I think they do. I just think you have to address that position. You traded away Mac Jones. Let's take a look at the depth chart and see what they did. So not a crazy amount, to be honest. Bringing in KJ Osborne, they're still going to need to address, wide receiver. Jacoby Brissett could start for this team in a pinch if they had to have him start, right? Hunter Henry resigns, Austin Hooper comes in. They definitely need to take a look at the defense, potentially the back end. They got some pieces there. Sean Wade's still there. Linebackers look okay. Matthew Judon's a fantastic piece. Keon White, they're hoping takes a step this year, obviously. Same with Christian Barmore, a little bit of a step forward. But they have to address quarterback for potentially this year, but most certainly in the future. And for me, it just makes the most sense to stick and pick here. I don't think that maybe 3 first-round picks get it done. Maybe. And do the Patriots want to move back? Maybe. But bringing in a guy like Jacoby Brissett, I think he's the perfect backup, the perfect mentor, and he's a very similar player, to be honest, to a Drake May. So that's the way I see the Patriots going. They just stick and pick potentially. A lot of people could say that he's QB1 in this class, in all honesty. People say that maybe about Jaden Daniels above Caleb Williams, with turnovers being an issue, fumbles, that sort of a thing. But I just think that the Patriots stick and pick. And we'll get into what I think the Vikings do, obviously, later in this draft. But I see Drake May just being too enticing, too much of a, definitely not a sure thing, but too much of a project that you want to work with, that you want to mold. I think Gerard Mayo really likes him as a player, and that's what I think they do. They stick and pick. They go ahead and grab the quarterback of the future, Drake May, New England Patriots quarterback. So we're at 4. Draft starts here. This is where the trades are going to start to be talked about. I think most people think, and most mock drafts I see, and it's no secret. Everybody's kind of aligned that those first 3 picks are going to be quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. So we'll see what happens here. But this is kind of where the draft starts, I guess. The first non-quarterback. Yeah, maybe. The Vikings even trade more. Some are saying the handshake in place. Yeah, potentially. Maybe they're saying if Drake May is gone, then we can trade out for Jane Daniels or something. Who knows, right? Who knows what those conversations are being or are like? Kevin O'Connell said he just sent a bouquet of flowers to Robert Kraft the other day, and he was kind of talking about the situation. But we'll get into the Vikings. So we're at 4. And there's a lot of talk about trading. Obviously, JJ McCarthy's here. Is this where the Vikings trade up? Is this where the Giants trade up? Potentially some other suitors, the Broncos, stuff like that. Who's going to trade up for JJ McCarthy at this spot? The bottom line here for me is just that I do not think that the Cardinals are going to risk losing a talent like this. I don't think that anyone's going to kind of have the ammunition that they are requesting essentially for you to come up and draft potentially Marvin Harrison. Obviously, if you're coming up to here, you're probably drafting JJ McCarthy, but I just don't think the only feasible possibility, and I had this a few weeks ago in one of my kind of practice mock drafts, and Peter Schrager just had this in his mock draft as well, and that's the Giants trading up to 4. And that's the only feasible, realistic possibility that I see for the Cardinals. Because then worst case scenario, you trade back to 6, your consolation prize is Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, right? Even if you miss out on Marvin Harrison. But I just don't see them thinking it's necessary. And I don't think the Giants are going to trade what they feel the Cardinals feel is necessary to get up there and then essentially lose Marvin Harrison Jr. So the Cardinals stick and pick as well. There's no trades yet. The Cardinals stick and pick. Marvin Harrison Jr. is just too much of a talent. You cannot pass up on him, in my opinion, at this spot. So you go ahead, you make the pick. Don't think too much about it. You have tons of draft capital. Obviously, that's a massive need for this team. So they go ahead, they make the pick, make it easy, right? Got a little sip here. Anyone got a beverage? Cheers. A little gin smash. Tempo. All right. Pick number 5. This is where I think things get interesting. This is where I think the draft really starts. And this is where things are going to get a little wonky for me. And hopefully you guys could follow along and make sense of it with me. This is my thoughts about what happens here. So LA Chargers, 5th overall. They got a lot of needs. They got a lot of holes. They kind of blew up this entire roster, obviously. Jim Harbaugh comes in. New GM, Joe Horitz comes in, Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator. They brought in every Baltimore Ravens former running back. Justin Herbert's obviously the quarterback. They need wide receiver, period, end of story. That's obvious. Everybody knows that. Again, deep wide receiver class, so they can address it a little later in the draft, right? They did a little bit on the defense, but that still needs some help. My point is there's tons of holes on this team. This team isn't 1 or 2 players, 1 or 2 pieces away from being a Super Bowl or even a playoff contender, realistically. So they need some picks. They need to fill out this roster. Do they need, Malik Neighbors? Is that going to put them over the edge, or could they bring in some guys later? Maybe a Roman Wilson, that sort of a thing. So a lot of people think that this is a potential trade spot, which I agree. I think this is a trade spot, and I think everyone's going to be surprised with who I have trading into this spot here. So this is what I think kind of happens. The Las Vegas Raiders are in love with Jaden Daniels. That's no secret. He was coached by Antonio Pierce, and Marvin Harrison, former Bengals coach, Marvin Lewis, former Bengals coach at Arizona State. They're in love with Jaden Daniels. That's no secret. They want Jaden Daniels. That's no secret. I think that's another thing with this Commanders pick. I didn't mention it there. My conspiracy theory behind this whole thing with Jaden Daniels, the Raiders, and the Commanders, and Cliff Kingsbury is Cliff Kingsbury goes into the Raiders thinking, hey, they're going to get Jaden Daniels. I know they like him. I know they want him, right? So I'm going to go work there. I'm going to go be the offensive coordinator with the Las Vegas Raiders. Comes around, it's not going to happen. They're now not able to get there. It is what it is. So what does Cliff Kingsbury do? Pulls his name out of the hat with the Raiders and goes and becomes the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders to coach Jaden Daniels. So the Raiders are going to lose out on Jaden Daniels. I think they know that. I think they knew that. I think Cliff Kingsbury knew that. So then what do? You shift your focus, right? You shift your focus to someone else. They've been doing homework on all these quarterbacks. And I think that this is where the Raiders kind of go all in here. They go all in on a player that I think they love. And the difference is I think that they have the ammunition that the Chargers want. I think the Chargers are going to want a first-round pick next year. I'm not so sure that, the Vikings are willing to do that sort of a thing. They don't have a second-round pick next year. I certainly don't think that the Denver Broncos are going to use that ammunition to move up and pick a J.J. McCarthy here. So I know that they like J.J. McCarthy a ton. There could be a bit of a Freudian slip here by Antonio Pierce saying that J.J. McCarthy he said his exact quote, I think, was, I don't know how you couldn't have J.J. McCarthy as a top 3 quarterback in this class. Something along those lines. Basically saying that J.J. McCarthy is a top 3 guy. He said that a long time ago in the season, and then there's not really been much of a peep. So is that him letting it slip a little bit? Maybe. Obviously, they need offensive line. They can address that in this draft a little bit later. So what do I think happens here? I think I've already spelled it out. The Las Vegas Raiders trade up. And they don't even have it here as an option. That's annoying because it's definitely a possibility. I have the Las Vegas Raiders trading up. They obviously trade 13 for 5. They add in. So 105. For the Chargers side, which is a 4th round selection, 13th overall, 77th overall, which is a 3rd round pick, a 2025 first, and a 2025 3rd or 4th, something like that. That's what I see happening here. That's my thoughts. That's what I think. I think 5 is the trade spot. Do they want 2 first-round picks? The problem with the Vikings, I'm not so sure the Vikings want to trade 2 first-round picks this season if it's not for, again, like you said, Jeff, in the chat there, if it's not for Drake May or even Jaden Daniels, and certainly obviously not Caleb Williams, I don't think they want to spend that capital on J.J. McCarthy. I just don't think so. I think that the Raiders might like him more, and I think they're willing to pay the price. So that's what I think happens. We're going to force that trade. The Raiders trade up and they get their quarterback of the future. You go back to, what did Al Davis say? What's Al Davis is saying? Just win, baby. 27-1, national champion, J.J. McCarthy. Just win, baby. They can select an offensive lineman at 44. They still have that 44th overall pick because they have to address the offensive line. That's for sure. But they can do that later in the draft. They still have some capital. They're not far off. The Raiders really are not that far away, in my opinion. So if they get a quarterback like J.J. McCarthy and he ends up being the guy, I think he can run that offense for this team. And I think that they can succeed with him under center. So that's my selection. A little bit of a shocker. I don't know too many people that have the Raiders trading up for McCarthy. So there you go. That's my kind of first little nugget, first little surprise of the draft. And I've got a few, at least in my opinion. We'll see if people agree or not. So that's what I got so far. First 5 picks off the board. Caleb Williams to the Bears, Jaden Daniels to the Commanders, Drake May to the Patriots, Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Cardinals. We got our first trade. The Raiders trade up from 13 to 5 and select J.J. McCarthy. And we're off to the races. So here we are at 6. There's been lots of talk with the Giants. Are they going to move up? Are they going to trade for a quarterback? They've been doing their homework, everything like that. The reality is, I think with the Giants is they kind of pigeonholed themselves. They're kind of attached and they're kind of screwed. They have to, kind of roll with Daniel Jones a little bit. They have to see if he can be the guy. And yeah, Drew Lock comes in. I know, here's the other thing with Drew Lock. I know that the Giants love Drew Lock. There was talks that they were going to be picking Drew Lock over Daniel Jones in that draft year, right? They love Drew Lock. So maybe they're righting the wrong here. Drew Lock is still young enough. And if Daniel Jones falters here, you still got Tommy DeVito in there. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens at the backup quarterback spot with Daniel Jones and, between Drew Lock. But I think Drew Lock can come in and play for this team and be okay in a pinch. But I think they just have to do what they have to do with Daniel Jones. They have to give him this season. They have to see what he can do. They address the offensive line in a good way. Jermaine Illuminor comes in from the Raiders. He's a quality right tackle. He can play. Aaron Stinney, he's at least a backup. They have Evan Neal still, who's, right on our lads as a backup right here. Jalen Mayfield is a former, I think top 3 round pick, something like that. John Michael Smits is a fantastic center. So they have some pieces here on the offensive line. They should be okay enough there, and they can add to it later in the draft. And they did some stuff in the defense. Brian Burns obviously was a massive get. Jalen Mills comes in. That's helpful. Jordan Phillips is helpful. They have some pieces here. Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, that's fantastic. Boogie Basham can play. Azeez Ojulari can play. So what do they need? Obviously, the quarterback is on the board, but I think they need weapons here. Darius Slayton's holding out for a new contract right now in OTAs, or not OTAs, voluntary minicamp. Jalen Hyatt, 3rd round pick. Wan'Dale Robinson should be healthy again, but that's basically it. Isaiah Hodgins, I guess you could say, is helpful there, but they need some pieces on offense. If they're going to give this team to Daniel Jones for one more year, they need a weapon. They absolutely need some help on the offensive side of the ball. And that's the way they go. Obviously, there's 2 wide receivers here. One, it could be one or the other. I just think that it's going to be Malik Neighbors. The Brian Dable and after the combine, they said they like Malik Neighbors a lot, in quote fingers. He's a true alpha on this offense. And the reality with picking a wide receiver here is rising tides lift all boats, right? That's what's going to happen with this offense, in my opinion. So don't make it too difficult. Again, it could be Rome Odunze, could be Malik Neighbors. I think it's Malik Neighbors. And then there you go. They get a weapon. It makes sense. And there it is. So let's take a look at some comments here. I see Murphy at 11. Penix at 23 for the Vikings. They're not high on, Knicks at 23 for the Vikings, not high on Penix. We'll see what transpires the rest of this draft here. Putt Daddy, what's up, man? Good to see you. Sorry, but as a Chiefs fan, I love the Raiders, Chargers, and Broncos scam to fill those roster holes. And no doubt. You always want to see that with your division mates. Neighbor 6, Alt, Turner, Odunze, Bowers, Murphy. We'll see. I certainly have some surprises in here coming up, so we'll see what they do. But you're on the right track. So Titans are here, obviously 7th overall. We'll move on. Titans are up. Let's pull up the squad. Brian Callahan comes in. His dad, Bill Callahan, offensive line guru kind of a thing. This team, the bottom line, I've been saying this live on the show, for a few weeks. This offense has to address the left side of this offensive line. They need a left tackle. And yes, I'm getting at Joe Alt. I won't make you wait too long. It's going to be Joe Alt. They just have to, in order for this offense to function the way, at an NFL level and the way that they need and want it to, they have to draft a left tackle here. And they do have a couple options, but the reality is Joe Alt is the number 1 left tackle in this draft, in my opinion. He's plug and play. I was concerned that the Titans didn't didn't send anybody to his pro day, but they brought him in for a one-on-one, a visit. So that makes sense. That connects the dots. So I'm fine with that. They go ahead, Joe Alt. Don't make it too difficult. Make it easy. There you go. And, so far we're not getting out of line, except for a little surprise here with JJ McCarthy to the Raiders. I think that's the one first kind of shocker, but I've got a couple more coming that I think will be interesting. Since Harbaugh likes to run the ball. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they do at 13 here where they move down. So I think that they definitely want to run the ball. That's very obvious. But we'll see what they do at running back. Again, they brought in all the former Baltimore Ravens running backs. So we'll see what they end up doing. But we'll move on. The Atlanta Falcons pick 8th again, as they always do, right? The past 3 years in a row, essentially, they've picked 8th overall. But who's left on the board here? And who needs what? So obviously, let's take a look at the team that I think trades up. So who do I think trades up in this spot? I think it's a perfect spot for Atlanta to trade back. I think they have tons of options here. They have tons of guys on their board that they can certainly roll with and feel comfortable with. So I think that they're fine to take a couple of draft picks or a draft pick and move back a few spots. And one of, if not all of their guys will still be there when they pick, as long as they don't go back too far. So where do they go? I think the Jets make a lot of sense to trade up here. It's only 2 spots for the Falcons. So they say, yeah, why not? Again, all of our guys could still be there if we move back 2 spots. So why not? Let's take some extra draft capital. So what are the Jets looking for? Yes, left tackle for sure. Tyron Smith comes in, future probably Hall of Famer left tackle Tyron Smith. Morgan Moses comes in, right tackle. He can absolutely play and get the job done. They still have Max Mitchell there, who's played meaningful snaps for this team. John Simpson comes in as well. Elijah Vera Tucker, Joe Tippmann from last year, Wes Schweitzer, whatever. He can play in a pinch. He's a swing guard to center backup guy. So they address the offensive line, right? Take a look at this defense. This defense is fucking scary for the Jets. In my opinion, this defense is insane. They brought in Hassan Reddick super cheap on a trade. That's scary. Jermaine Johnson is fantastic young player. I really, really like how he plays. Will McDonald, same thing. Excited for that. John Franklin Myers is still there. Michael Clemens is there. Lecky Fotu comes in, big body guy. Solomon Thomas, they have listed as a depth piece here. Quinton Williams, one of the best in the game, and they bring in Javon Kinlaw to round it out. This defensive front is insane. Linebackers, fantastic spot. The back end of this defense is very, very good. This defense is scary, scary good, in my opinion. So they're fine on the defensive side right now. Yes, offensive line is a need. They brought in Mike Williams on a 1-year deal, 1-year prove-it deal. It's really nothing. And at MetLife Stadium, I'm not comfortable with Mike Williams being a prominent piece on my offense. So this team needs offense, obviously. And there's 2 players. If they make this trade, which I think they do, the Jets move up 2 spots. Falcons, again, easy to move back. Maybe all of the guys on their board are going to be there. So let's make that easy. 10 for 8. What else do they add in? Let's pull this up. They throw in, for their trouble, 111th overall. Boom. So they throw in a pick. Falcons say, yeah, why the hell not? That makes sense for us. All of our guys might be there. And then it's 2 players, obviously. There's 2 offensive players here that the Jets would be after. Who's it going to be? The top 2 players on the board, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers. Who do they like more? Who do they want? You see what I'm getting at here. So in my opinion, more of a difference maker on this offense is going to be Rome Odunze. So the offensive line is okay. It's in a good spot. He's just more serious, more dangerous of a weapon, in my opinion, more long-term of a weapon. It's Rome Odunze for me. So the Jets trade up 2 spots. They go ahead and fill out a running mate for Garrett Wilson, which is absolutely a desperate need for this team. And they pass on Brock Bowers. But again, I think that Rome Odunze is a better pick here for this offense. So there you go. Jets, Rome Odunze. Jets get another weapon. They're filling out this team. It's a dangerous looking squad. The Jets are trying to win this division this year. So we have 2 trades now. Again, nothing crazy out of line realistically. Also, the Jets want to get ahead of the Bears. They want to jump the Bears. That's why they trade the extra pick and get the guy that they need and want. Rome Odunze could be wide receiver 1 in this class. He's wide receiver 1 and a top 5 pick in a lot of other draft classes. So if you can get him at 8, that's a steal in my opinion. So great pick. They move up. Rome Odunze, 8th overall to the Jets. So we're sitting here at 9. Bears are on the clock again. They do have some needs. It's nothing crazy. If you look at their draft capital, though, 4 draft picks in this entire draft. They're all inside the top 122, obviously. So if they're looking at their draft board, they're sitting there saying, man, there's a lot of options for us. We got a few holes to fill. Let's take a look at their offense, or sorry, the Bears team here. So people say they need offensive line. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I think it's not as dire of a need. I don't think they need to sit here and pick the top tackle or top 3 tackle in this class right now. So, and if they do, they can trade back and they can get it. So that's not a huge dire need, in my opinion. Braxton Jones is an above average left tackle. He has been in his first 2 seasons as a rookie and last year as a sophomore. Darnell Wright was a first-round pick last year. There's your bookend tackles. At least you are comfortable enough going into the season with those 2 guys, if you have to. Nate Davis is fantastic. Tevin Jenkins needs to stay healthy and get there, right? Which he hopefully should and will. Ryan Bates comes in, Coleman Shelton, sure. So they could take a look at center. But realistically, I don't think it's as dire of a need as everybody else might think. Yes, wide receiver might be on the board, but again, we just saw the Jets move up for Rome Odunze there. So they took him off the table. So if we look at this defense that did improve drastically last year, they need to take another step forward. And how are they going to do that? There's 2 spots. They got some good young players on the back end of the defense. Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson, obviously. So they have some pieces. They could use another piece on the back end. They could certainly use a corner. Kevin Byard comes in. But for me, it's the front line here. It's the front, 4. I wouldn't say front 7. It's the front 4. Montez Sweat came in halfway through the year last year and led this team in sacks. He's fantastic, but he needs some help. Dominic Robinson, maybe DeMarcus Walker can help out. Jacob Martin comes in, but you need a running mate. You need again. So there's pieces, is what I'm getting at with the Bears. So they need to fill out this roster a little bit. Let's get some draft capital. So who do I think comes up here though? It's going to shock a lot of people, I think. This is the big shocker for me. I haven't seen anyone else do this yet. And I think that this makes tons of sense for what they have right now. So actually, it's right there. Wow, that's funny. The LA Rams. I think the LA Rams move up in this draft. Look at this draft capital for the Rams. Yes, we've seen them have a lot of picks, but they haven't had a first-round pick in the last 8 years. And they're going to use that capital. They're going to use that ammunition that they have. And the Bears want to add some draft capital. So 19 and 9, obviously. There you go. What else do I have them trading? 19, 52. So they trade their first and second round pick for the player that they're getting. It's going to be worth it. 154, 155. And next year's third round pick. Pretty hefty price tag, but reality of it is just volume picks, right? And they still have, with the one coming back, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks for the Rams in this year's draft, with trading 4 picks in this year's, draft capital that they have. So I think they make use. 84%, you're going to have to give up a little bit more. You're going into the top 10, obviously, right? So it's very viable. It makes sense. Maybe the capital's a little bit off, but it makes sense. The Bears get some picks. They can fill out that roster, and they make the trade. So the Rams come up to 9th overall. They use their draft capital for the first time that they've never had a first-round pick last 8 years in a row since drafting Jared Goff. What are they coming up for? For me, you go ahead and you add a difference maker on this offense that they do not have, and that's Brock Bowers. I think that it makes just an absolute ton of sense to move up here. You can't really follow too many dots with the Rams because they don't really bring guys in for top 30 visits. They're more about the tape. And the tape for Brock Bowers is pretty fantastic if you haven't watched it, right? Other things with this, Matthew Stafford, former Georgia Bulldog, right? Stetson Bennett isn't exactly on this team, but whatever. Former teammate and Georgia Bulldog, obviously, right? So when they were scouting Stetson Bennett, you obviously can't help but see Brock Bowers out there. Even Sean McVay, people may not know this. Sean McVay was a Georgia high school football legend, right? He won Player of the Year, Georgia Football Player of the Year. So he's from Georgia, went to high school in Georgia. There's tons of connections here. They address this team. The offensive line comes in, Jonah Jackson. Colby Parkinson comes in on a fairly large contract. Yeah. But if you think that Colby Parkinson is even in this relatively close in the same stratosphere as Brock Bowers, then I don't know what to tell you. Tyler Higbee just tore his ACL and MCL at 31 years old. That's certainly not a good sign, right? You're adding a weapon that you can move around. He's a mismatch nightmare. He can do a lot of things. And you're basically putting this offense over the edge again. And with the defensive additions, Darius Williams comes back, won a Super Bowl with this team. Tre'Davious White comes in. Kobe Turner led this team in sacks, or maybe it was Byron Young. I think Byron Young. Either way, 2 rookies last year led this team in sacks, so they should take a step forward. They have tons of capital. It just makes tons of sense to me. The Rams move up, they use some draft capital, and they get potentially like the biggest, best weapon in this entire draft with Brock Bowers. And the Bears add a bunch of draft capital to fill out their roster. And there you go. I could see something like that. I like the pick. Brock Bowers, 9th overall, trade up for the Los Angeles Rams. And there we go. Take a little sip. That was a lot. Take a look at the chat. Have yet to hear anyone up here talk about jumping the Bears. A lot of chatter about moving back with the Raiders, though. Yeah, maybe. I think that they move up to get that. If Rome Odunze is there at 8th overall and they can move up, the Falcons are happy to move back, I think, with so many options on their board. And this one's easy. I'm not going to dig too much into this one because for me, it's either Quinyon Mitchell or Dallas Turner for the Falcons. I don't think it's anyone else realistically. There could be some other, there certainly could be a surprise here. They could even stick at 8 and pick Rome Odunze. They could do that. But I think that they need help on the defense for sure. They need to get after the quarterback. That's what it is. And with all the additions to offense, bringing in Kirk Cousins, obviously, with those additions, they're going to be in games more. They're going to be leading a lot of more games. They're going to be in more games. They're going to have to get after the opponent quarterback. So for me, it's Dallas Turner here. And again, it's not too much of a secret. Most people have Dallas Turner going to the Falcons. That's not breaking any ground, but I think that I agree, right? And for me, again, it's between Quinyon Mitchell or Dallas Turner. And I think it's just more important to get after the opponent's quarterback at a much higher clip. So pretty easy pick, fits the defense, fits what they want to do. So Dallas Turner to the Falcons, they trade back. And again, there's tons of there's tons of guys. I think Quinyon Mitchell and Dallas Turner will both be there if they pull back 2 spots. I think they know it. I think everybody knows it. So it makes sense to add a fourth round pick, whatever it was, and move back a little bit. Now we got the Vikings. So Jeff's in the chat. He's a Vikings fan. Where do we want to go with this? Michael Penix is on the board. Bo Nix is on the board. Do we want to go there? I don't know. Maybe later in the draft they can do that. Do they love those guys? I like Bo Nix a lot. I like Bo Nix more than Penix personally. I have Bo Nix ahead of Penix in my rankings for a variety of reasons, and maybe we'll get to that later. But and the thing is with the Vikings, I don't think Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, I think is his name. It's hard to. I think that's how you say his name. Anyways. I don't think he's going to be willing to give away the draft capital that a team like, the Chargers or obviously the Cardinals. I don't think he's going to be willing to give up that kind of draft capital to move up there. So I think he's going to stick here with all the draft capital that they have, 11, 2 first-round picks. Obviously, they got 108. You see the draft capital here. They got tons of picks. So I think they stick and pick. I don't think that they're going to trade up or down with this 12th overall. 11th overall. I don't think they trade up or down. I think they're going to stick and pick here because they have some guys in mind, and I think they're kind of all going to be there. So let's take a look at the defense quickly. Let's take a look at the defense because I think that's the way they go. Yes, quarterback is a need, but I honestly think that Kevin O'Connell would be okay with Sam Darnold starting games for this team. I honestly think he thinks he can work with them. So we'll see if that ends up being true or not, but we'll come back around to that one. Offensive line's in a pretty good spot. They brought in Aaron Jones. They addressed the defense. They definitely still need some pass rushers. That's for sure. They brought in Van Ginkel, and Grenard's a fantastic get. That's for sure. They lost to Neil Hunter. So they definitely need some help here. The back end could use some help as well. Realistically, I think they just have to address the defense here. They have to. Yes, the offense took some hits in this past offseason, obviously with Kirk Cousins leaving, but this defense was pretty porous last year, and they have to address it. They have to make it better. And how do they do that? For me, it makes sense. Jeff, you're in the chat. You agree. I agree. That's who I have them taken as well. It's Byron Murphy. He's just the best up the middle pass rusher. He's the best defensive tackle in this draft, in my opinion, and I don't think it's particularly close. Johnny Jerjon, Johnny Mitchell's there, Newton is there as well, but he's more of a straight up pass rusher. I think Byron Murphy's your TFL guy. He can absolutely get after the quarterback, and that's a fantastic piece in the middle of your defense. So I think they stick and pick. Byron Murphy's there. Let's get our guy, and there you go. Don't make it too difficult on yourselves. Moving on to number 12, we got the Raiders. They're at 12. Do they trade up for a quarterback? Do they stick and pick a quarterback? Do they again, it comes down to whether or not they like Bo Nix or Michael Penix enough to stick and pick and take them here. Do I think that they do that? No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't think it makes sense. If they trade back here, which they could do, mind you, they have a reasonable amount of capital. Like if someone's willing to trade their later first round pick and a second, maybe 2 second-round picks or something like that to the Broncos to move up to 12, maybe I could see the Broncos trading back. But who's trading up for who at this point? That's kind of where I'm at with it, is who's trading up and who are they after and what are they after? Why would anyone trade up here? You have to find a dance partner. And I just couldn't. I tried to force it in a couple, scenarios that I had in my head, but realistically, I think they're just going to be forced to stick and pick here and stay where they're at. So what do they need? A lot. The Broncos need a lot of help. On the offensive line is in a pretty good spot, in my opinion. Bowles is still there. They brought in Mike McGlinchey, who's fantastic. Quinn Miners is there. They lost Lloyd Cushenberry, sure. Ben Powers comes in. Their offensive line's in a pretty good spot, realistically, considering the grand scheme of the needs on this team, which is a lot. Offensive line is pretty low on that priority list, in my opinion. Wide receivers, of course, but you're not wide receiver away. Like you're not Brian Thomas Jr. away from being a quality offense, realistically. You're also not Bo Nix or Michael Penix away from being a quality offense. So that I don't see happening. So look at this defense. This defense needs some help. Pat Surtain is one of the better corners in the game right now. That's fantastic. And he's really it. To be honest, Pat Surtain is the only real difference maker on this entire team. Literally this entire team. Patrick Surtain Jr. the second is the only difference maker on this team. They need some help. So again, they could trade back, but they got to address this defense. And what do they got to get after the quarterback? What do they got to help this defensive line? Baron Browning, who's a bit of a tweener, I really like, and I do think he is a pass rusher. I always said that back to 2021 when he was drafted. Jonathan Cooper's quality. Ronnie Perkins has been given up on by another team already. Nick Pitino had a decent rookie year last year, sophomore year last year. But that's where I think they go. And there's an absolute freak that I know they love in this draft class. He lit up the combine. He looked great in the Senior Bowl. That's Jared Verse. Jared Verse to the Denver Broncos, 12th overall. I think that makes tons of sense for this team. He's another piece. You got to address the defense again with your only real difference maker on your entire roster being on the defensive side of the football. Just get him some help and try to stay in some games. That's what it's going to be for the Broncos this year. Stay in some games as long as you can, and maybe you can eke out a win or two here and there, or they can help you eke out a win or two, right? So that's what I think they do. Jared Verse, 12th overall to the Broncos. So Jeff in the chat, top offensive tackles, Bengals could trade up. You see the background here. I'm a huge Bengals fan, obviously. The Bengals do not trade up in drafts. They just do not. It never happens. I would love it if they did. A lot of times I would love it if the Bengals would trade up in some drafts, get a player, get Brock Bowers, do all these different things. It's just not going to happen. I know for a fact there's maybe a 2% chance the Bengals trade up or down or anything in this draft. They're going to stick and pick at 18. They're going to stick. They might trade up in the 3rd, 4th round sort of thing. Maybe sometimes they do that. But it's super, 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 super rare that the Bengals make draft day trades, especially in the 1st round. So they won't. They just won't. That's my opinion on my Bengals. But moving on to 13, this is the back half of the trade for the Raiders moving up for J.J. McCarthy. Let's do a quick roll call here. So first overall, obviously Caleb Williams, no shocker there. Jaden Daniels, 2nd overall to the Commanders. Drake May to the Patriots. Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals. J.J. McCarthy, the Raiders trade up. They get their quarterback. J.J. McCarthy to the Raiders at 5. Malik Neighbors at 6 to the Giants. Joe Alt to the Titans makes tons of sense. Rome Odunze, the Jets trade up 2 spots. They get a difference maker on the offense. Rams trade up a bunch, 10 picks. The Bears get a bunch of draft capital that they're after. Brock Bowers makes a huge difference on that offense. Dallas Turner, they can trade back, get a couple guys they want. Dallas Turner to the Falcons makes sense at 10. Byron Murphy to the Minnesota Vikings at 11. And then we got Jared Verse going to the Broncos at 12. So we're at 13th overall. Chargers traded back. They have tons of needs. They added some draft capital. What have they made no secret about? They want to bolster this offensive line. There's a complete black hole at right tackle for this team. They have Rashawn Slater, fantastic former Pro Bowler on the left side at left tackle. They need to bolster this offensive line for what the Chargers like to do on offense. It's no secret. I'm not breaking any ground. It's not revolutionary thinking over here. So who do I think they go with? Who do I think the pick is for the Chargers? Well, again, I think it's tackle. I think it's specifically right tackle. You have to protect the best player on your team, and that's Justin Herbert. Again, no secret that they want to run the ball. This guy is a grown man. He's very, very mature. He left his home, his comfort zone, went down to IMG to be a left tackle, to be a football player, to eventually make the NFL, goes to Alabama. He's a mauler. He was actually offered, it's J.C. Latham. He was offered by Jim Harbaugh to play for Michigan. He ended up going to Alabama, obviously. So it makes tons of sense. Bring in J.C. Latham. You got your bookend tackles. Offensive line's in a great spot. Makes tons of sense. Justin Herbert's happy. And you got some draft capital to do it. So there you go. That's how I think the Chargers go. Makes sense. Talisi Fuaga's on the table there for them too. Another right tackle. But that's where I think they go is J.C. Latham, just because of the connections there with Harbaugh. So there you go. Move on to 14th overall. We got the Saints. Again, tons of holes on this team. They need a quarterback, I think. I think they should address the position. Derek Carr is not going to be there for too much longer. Sure, he can still get the job done, I suppose. I don't think they're a wide receiver away, and they have some pieces there. So what do? If you look at this offense, let's look at the offense quickly. Won't spend too much time on this pick because it's super not sexy, but it makes tons of sense. So Mickey Loomis is GM of the Saints, has been for a long time, does a great job. Looks like they brought in Cedric Wilson, wonderful, but they have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. I like A.T. Perry a lot in this offense. Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau. They still got Taysom Hill, who can do everything. And then Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, blah, blah, blah. Look at this defense. They definitely need some help, but they brought in Chase Young, took a risk on him. Carl Granderson, K. Passa, Cameron Jordan's there. Peyton Turner, former first-round pick. You can't keep swinging and missing on pass rushers if you're the Saints. You really can't. The back end looks okay. They have to address this offensive line for me. And if you look at these players, and some aren't on here anymore, Ryan Ramczyk, first round pick. Cesar Ruiz, first-round pick. McCoy, second-round pick. Trevor Penning, first-round pick. Andres Pete was a first-round pick, right, who's no longer on this team. So if we look at what they lost, Ryan Ramczyk might have to retire. They just restructured his contract. He might have to retire. He might be done. So that's a huge hole there. Andres Pete, he's still a free agent, probably not going to be coming back. Trevor Penning struggled very, very badly as a rookie. So he needs to take a step up. So realistically, for Mickey Loomis, who loves first-round offensive linemen, he's no stranger to picking offensive linemen in the first round. I think it makes tons of sense. And a guy who has been compared to Ryan Ramczyk, that's Talisi Fuaga. So makes sense. They go ahead, plug up their right tackle spot, fill up their offensive line. Makes tons of sense to me. I know there's connection there. So there you go. Saints, 14th overall. I think they would like to trade back, but again, there's not teams chomping at the bit to trade up here, I don't think. I think there's enough talent and options for teams to fill their needs that they can at least sit and wait and see what happens. Have a few more guys go off the board and see what's left, sort of a thing. So Talisi Fuaga to the Saints makes tons of sense. 15th overall, this is going to be a doozy, peeps. This is where I think I'm going to get some heat, which is fine. I like it. All right. We got the Colts. We got the Colts 15th overall. Do I think they trade? I'll flat out just say no, I don't think they trade at all. Don't think they trade up. Don't think they trade down. Peter Schrager had them trading up for Malik Neighbors. I just don't particularly see that happening, to be honest. But I think he's on the right track. Obviously, he knows what he's doing. He knows way more than me, but I think he's on the right track. Look at this defense. They absolutely need some help on the back end for sure. Samson Ebukam, again, bit of a tweener, but he can play in the league and get the job done. Deo Odeangbo, he's still there. Kwity Paye, Taekwon Lewis got re-signed here, so he's still there. EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, they have some pieces. They do need some pieces on the defense for sure, but I think they can address that later in the draft. I think they're looking offense. They got Anthony Richardson, their 4th overall pick last year, right? Super strong arm guy. You got Alec Pierce here, who ran the most go routes in the NFL last year. So they were just like, hey, go out to the sideline, run really fast, as fast as you can down the sideline, and just take at least one defensive player with you, and it'll open up the middle of the field. So that's pretty cool, telltale for me what they want to do. They want to open up the field. They need the threat of a deep threat, if that makes sense. They need the threat of a deep threat, right? At least you have to pay attention to it. And Alec Pierce is okay at that. But realistically, I think with where he's at now, a couple years in the league, I think he's, a role player, backup, sort of a wide receiver. I don't think he's a starter. You got Josh Downs in the slot. I like that. Michael Pittman is fantastic. They got to get a deal done there. I think they did actually get a deal done. Either way, he's on this team. That's fine. So they need a weapon. So where are they going to go? Wide receiver, obviously, is what I'm leading to. But who are they going to take? So let's pull up the wide receivers. You got Adonai Mitchell, Brian Thomas, Troy Franklin, Ladd McConkey, all, consensus type of first-round picks, right? So if you look at what they did in this offseason, a couple things that were telltale to me. Look at a pro day visit, combine visit, T30 visit, top 30 visit, right? And the big telltale for me was that Shane Steichen, head coach, the head coaches don't always go to pro days. Head coach Shane Steichen and Reggie Wayne, former Colts receiver and wide receiver coach for this team, they went to the Texas Pro Day. They went to the Texas Longhorns Pro Day, right? And with this player that I'm going to have them taking, there was a Pro Day visit, there was a top 30 visit, and a combine visit. But not only that, he absolutely lit up and electrified the crowd at the combine, which is where? In Indianapolis. So the fan base saw this happen. The coaches were there. He lit it up. He lit up Twitter. You got a strong arm quarterback. Big surprise pick here. I think that the Indianapolis Colts draft Xavier Worthy. That's the way I think they go about this. He's got things that you cannot teach, right? And that's something that Anthony Richardson, their quarterback, has as well. You got traits. You've got things that you cannot teach. And all the signs kind of point to, for me, it's either Adonai Mitchell or Xavier Worthy. And for me, it's got to be Xavier Worthy. This isn't John Ross. He is not John Ross. What he did as a true freshman on this team is exceptional. And if you look at the quarterback play, Quinn Ewers is a terrible quarterback. In next year's draft, I want nothing to do with Quinn Ewers. For me, you should have transferred out because Arch Manning's got to be the guy there. You got to get Quinn Ewers out of there. I've said it lots on this channel when I was doing drafts and such. These Texas pass catchers, JT Sanders, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, all would have had better stat lines if they had a better quarterback. Quinn Ewers is not good. So let's get that out of the way. Beyond that, he really didn't have any good quarterback play, Xavier Worthy. His route running is more refined and better than people think. Speed kills. You can't watch his tape and not see a little bit of Tyreek Hill in there. You can't. That's what I saw a little bit. You squint your eyes a little bit. The measurables are very, very similar. To be honest, he needs to put on a little more weight. But other than that, you can't not see a little bit of Tyreek Hill here. So that's the way I think they go. It's a bit of a shocker, a bit of a surprise. People are going to say, oh, they could trade down and get him, all this kind of stuff. Realistically, you just don't do that. You like a guy, take him, right? And who is anyone trading up for in this range? For me, it just doesn't make sense for anyone to move up. So no one's going to be calling them to trade back, right? And you don't want to move back too far, blah, blah, blah. Big shocker, first shock of the day. Indianapolis Colts draft Xavier Worthy, 15th overall. There's a big shocker. Might take some heat for that, but I really don't care. That's what I think happens. 16th overall, Seattle Seahawks. This one is too easy for me as well, I think. I think it just makes way too much sense. They have massive black hole up the middle, and that's where they need to be better for this offense to function properly. So make it easy. New offensive coordinator comes in, former head coach at Washington. He's got his former left tackle who might be more comfortable as a guard or maybe a center, but certainly a guard can get the job done. Basically like, Vera Tucker for the Jets. A few other guys that can do a lot of different things. Elton Jenkins maybe for the Packers, sort of a guy that you can move around the offensive line if need be, right? So Troy Fautanu makes tons of sense. It's easy. Local guy, offensive coordinator was his coach. There you go. Plug him in, plug and play. Makes too much sense. I don't want to waste too much time on that one because I just think that makes too much sense. So there you go. That's what I think the Seattle Seahawks do. 16th overall. 17th overall, we got the Jags. Again, could be a trade back spot, but who's trading up for what? Just doesn't make sense to me. I think they're going to stick here and stick and pick. They have some needs. And for me, it's on the defense. Darius Williams left this team, or I think they traded him, right? He's off the team. If there were corners off the board, if they had lost, if Quinyon Mitchell, if Terrion Arnold, if there were some corners off the board, I think they'd be more open to a wide receiver. But realistically, they have the pick of the litter at corner here. And I think that's where they have to go. That's what makes the most sense. They need some help on the back end of this defense. And I think we saw that in a lot of Jaguars games last year. So I think they stick and pick. I think it's going to be defense, and I think it's going to be corner specifically. And is that Cooper DeJean? Is that Quinyon Mitchell? Is that Terrion Arnold? For me, I think the guy that fits this defense the best is Terrion Arnold. So that's where I think they go. It's between Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold for me. I just connected too many more dots to Arnold than Mitchell. And, like Daniel Jeremiah has him as his 8th overall player in this draft. So, if he's falling to 12, technically that's a huge, discount. So that's why I think they go. Again, it could be Mitchell, could be a couple other guys, but it makes the most sense there for Terry and Arnold to come in. And again, kind of just start right away for this team. So there you go. 17th overall, Terrion Arnold. And we're moving on to my team. We got the Cincinnati Bengals. Here we go. So let's take a quick peek at this team. A lot of people are going to say, Brock Bowers, but obviously he's not on the board here. A lot of people are going to say offensive line, which, you could be fine for saying that. I agree. You definitely need to address the offensive line. A wide receiver for me, to be honest, I'll say that I don't have them picking Brian Thomas Jr., but if they're in this position and Brian Thomas Jr. is here, that's absolutely, no questions asked, absolutely who I want. I don't think they're going to take Brian Thomas Jr. I think they're going to end up trying to get a deal done with T. Higgins. That's just kind of how the way the Bengals operate. We'll see if that ends up happening. Offensive line, yes, completely on the board, but they brought in Trent Brown, who can still get the job done. He's 30 years old. He's getting long in the tooth. They do need to address it, but I think that that's a good get. And the reality for me is I think you could go into the season with this offensive line and be okay with it, as long as they get some help somewhere in the draft. I don't think they go offensive line. Mike Gesicki comes in. And obviously, it doesn't matter because Brock Bowers, I don't expect to be here whatsoever. So we won't even dig into that. Defense is in a pretty okay spot as far as the front seven's concerned. Sheldon Rankins comes in to hopefully replace DJ Reader. BJ Hill's fantastic for this team. They got really good pass rushers, to be honest. Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson is fantastic. Miles Murphy was a first-round pick last year. Cam Sample can get the job done. Joseph Asai is still there. So they have some weapons there. They have some interior guys, some run stuffers, that sort of thing. Linebackers in a great spot. For me, this defense has to get better and has to get better against the pass. They were the second worst team in passing yards allowed last year. And that is not how a Lou Anarumo defense runs. So you play a lot of zone, you play a lot of bend, don't break defense. That's the way the Bengals play defense. We bend, we don't break, we allow field goals, not touchdowns. Last year, we allowed too many touchdowns. So I think it's got to be the back end of this defense. It's not sexy at all. I'm not over here loving and just absolutely super ecstatic with this pick. I like the player, don't get me wrong. And they can go a bunch of different ways, but there's a local kid, best player available and on the board, in my opinion, could arguably be cornerback 1 in this draft. And the Bengals love speed on defense, especially on the back end. DJ Turner, 4.2 guy, right? They love speed on defense. So who do they go with? For me, again, local kid, Quinyon Mitchell sitting there. For me, he's the best player available right now. And that's the way I think they go. You got to help this defense. You have to. If you want to get back to the Super Bowl, which we do, you have to help this defense. So there you go. You can't even get to the playoffs being the second worst in the NFL against the pass. You can't. So they have to do something there. Quinyon Mitchell's the pick. I don't exceptionally love it, but it is what it is. He's the best player on the board. I'm okay with it. I'm not upset. So there you go. We'll see what happens on draft day. Chicago Bears, after the trade back, they get some draft capital. They're happy with that. They have some picks that they could fill out this roster now. They're comfortable there. And they traded back because there's lots of guys on their radar. You know, again, they could go offensive line here. Obviously, Caleb Williams was their first pick in the draft. That makes sense. They got to help this defense for me. That's where they got to go. And to be honest, for me, it's more getting after the other team's quarterback. They need some bodies up front. They got to get after the quarterback. They need help for Montez Sweat. If they don't get help for Montez Sweat, he could regress a little bit, in my opinion. That could happen with defenses. Look at Cam Jordan. He's just getting older now, and he's always been good. And even a guy like TJ Watt, like, you can't just have that one guy. As soon as you add a running mate, and that's what the Saints have always been looking for. They've never been able to find a running mate for Cam Jordan. Right? Alex Highsmith now with the Steelers there. That's a fantastic defense. And he's 10 plus sacks as well. Highsmith I'm talking about. So they need a running mate for Montez Sweat. They absolutely need it. And where do I think they go? The guy that fits this defense the best. And it's just really no question. And he might be, if they're sitting there at 19th overall and they could get this player who could be the best overall defensive player in this entire draft class, I think that they're licking their chops. They sprint to the podium. And who do they select? Liatu Latu. Makes too much sense for how their defense operates. And he has said at his comment interview, he would love to learn from Montez Sweat. He emulates him, takes after him, watches his game, that sort of a thing. I think it makes way too much sense to just fire those two pass rushers to get after the quarterback. And he fits this defense better than any other first round edge rusher. Any other, better than Jared Verse, who's close, but way better than Dallas Turner, that's for sure. So that's what I think they do. Yes, offensive line's on the board for sure. Olu Fashanu is still there. Fashanu's still there. Maris Mims, Barton. There's some talent still here for sure. But this is where I think it starts to kind of dry up as far as surefire, in my opinion, first round picks, and things can go different ways from here on out, sort of thing. So we're sitting at 20th overall. I'm going to grab a sip here, wet my whistle a little bit. There we go. 20th overall. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock. A lot of people are saying wide receiver. Yes, it's an absolute need for this team. But if you pay attention to the Steelers and how they operate, when's the last time you saw them draft a first-round wide receiver? If you don't know, I believe it was 2006, and it was Santonio Holmes. Last time they drafted a first-round wide receiver. So almost 20 years ago. I just don't see that happening. I definitely 100% obviously see them addressing wide receiver in this draft, but I don't think it's going to be at 20 here. So looking at this team, there's the quote out of the Steelers franchise is they're sick of losing playoff games, which is obviously absolutely fair. No one wants to lose playoff games. You got to get there, which they have been. So wide receiver is a massive need. Offensive line is a huge hole for me, and it's been no secret. You look at Dan Moore's stats, go on PFF, look at his stats here. Like, it is shocking how poor he's been playing, and he's been given a shot since a rookie. He comes in 2021 in a fourth round, and they start him. They plug and play as a left tackle, and he's been just terrible for this team since they inserted him in there. So, they could upgrade James Daniels. Broderick Jones could stay at right tackle. Maybe you move him to the left side. You have some options there. Nate Herbig may or may not be able to get the job done, which is a concern. Isaac Suomalo comes in. He's very good. He's quality. Realistically, you could say he's the best offensive lineman in this entire team. Broderick Jones might be that guy. And then the defense is in a quality spot. They brought in Dante Jackson in a trade. That was the Deontay Johnson trade, right? Dante Jackson comes back. Deshaun Elliott comes in. Patrick Queen was a fantastic get for me. Phenomenal get, and came at a bit of a discount. I was pissed my Bengals didn't get him, to be honest with you. Landon Roberts can still do some good stuff. TJ Watt and Highsmith holding it down. Nick Herbig, Nate's brother, he's getting after the quarterback a little bit. So where do they go? You brought in Russell Wilson to be your starting quarterback this year. Justin Fields might be the quarterback of the future, the franchise quarterback for this team. We'll see on that. So how you help those guys out? You got to go offensive line. Again, with the way Dan Moore's played and the rest of this line, to be honest with you, you have to address this line and get better, especially with Arthur Smith coming in as your offensive coordinator. There's no secret out there that Arthur Smith loves to run the ball. So what do you need to run the ball? A quality offensive line, which the Steelers do not have. Who's still on the board? Olu Fashanu. This is a drop for me. This is a fairly substantial drop for me. And he kind of just falls into the Steelers' lap. There's not a crazy amount of connection between the Steelers and Fashanu. They didn't really meet with them much. But Dan Colbert, Kevin Colbert's son, former GM Kevin Colbert, director of college scouting, was at the Penn State Pro Day, right, with Fashanu there. There's two players on the Steelers currently that are former teammates. Joey Porter Jr. went to Penn State, and you might surprise you, but Pat Freiermuth was a teammate of Olu Fashanu at Penn State. So again, if you're scouting those guys, you're certainly seeing him. The tape makes sense. There's lots of options. The Steelers have been meeting with almost everybody. If you look at their visit tracker, it is just littered with every name you could think of. So Nate Wiggins is on the board. Amaris Mims is on the board for sure. Even Adonai Mitchell's on the board. Brian Thomas, obviously. There's tons of guys on their board here. So you could see them trade down, but with Fashanu falling in their lap, I think they just stick and make the pick. He's relatively local. Again, Penn State, Pittsburgh, just down the road. So I think it just makes too much sense for them to say, man, he's there. Let's take him. It makes too much sense. Plug and play on the left side. Dan Moore's now your swing tackle. Maybe you kick him inside to guard or something, see if he can help out. But I think that just makes too much sense in this instance where he falls into their lap. So there you go. Olu Fashanu, 20th overall to the Steelers. Just do a quick rundown and roll call if anybody's new. Hit that like button if you don't mind while you're here. Fire that like button. But let's roll through the picks. First overall, Caleb Williams, no-brainer. Jaden Daniels, number 2 to the Commanders. Again, to me, no-brainer, makes sense. Drake May, number 3 to the Patriots. 3 quarterbacks in a row. Marvin Harrison, 4th overall. J.J. McCarthy, the Raiders trade up. They get J.J. McCarthy at 5th overall with the Chargers. Malik Neighbors, 6th overall to the Giants. Joe Alt, 7th overall to the Titans. Rome Odunze, the Jets trade up 2 spots, grab Rome Odunze for the Jets at 8th overall. Brock Bowers, huge bit of a shocker, surprise one. The Rams trade up to 9th overall with the Bears. They had some draft capital. They get Brock Bowers to bolster that offense. Makes tons of sense. Dallas Turner, no-brainer. Falcons trade back a couple spots, get a guy they like. Byron Murphy to the Vikings at 11th overall. Jared Verse, 12th overall to the Broncos. J.C. Latham, 13th overall to the Chargers. Talisi Fuaga, 14th to the Saints. Xavier Worthy, big shocker here. Big surprise. Xavier Worthy is the pick at 15th overall to the Colts. Troy Fautanu to the Seahawks at 16th overall. Makes tons of sense. Terrion Arnold to the Jags at 17th. Quinyon Mitchell, 18th overall to the Bengals. Latu, 19th overall to the Bears. And then Olu Fashanu falls into the Steelers' lap at 20th overall. All right, moving forward. 21st overall, we got the Miami Dolphins. Let's take a look at this team. This team has a lot more needs than you would think. There's a lot more holes than you would think on this team. So let's dig into it a little bit. Obviously, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Braxton Berrios is there. They need a wide receiver, which they absolutely will and can address in this draft, but it's not enough of a need to make the pick here. Tua is their quarterback. It is what it is. Love it or hate it. It is what it is. He's their pick. Mostert, Achane, and Jeff Wilson are there. Ahmed's still there, sure. Jonnu Smith comes in at tight end. They address the offensive line a little bit. Jack Driscoll comes in. He can play a couple different spots on this line. Aaron Brewer comes in. He can play guard or center. So we'll see what happens. They lost a couple pieces on the O-line, though. That's for sure. Lost their center, lost their right guard. Let's dig into that in a second. Go to the defensive side of the ball. They definitely invested. Look at, again, all this teal kind of green. Neville Gallimore, Taylor Tart, so some big bodies up the middle. Benito Jones, big body up the middle. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, hopefully they can get healthy again. And Shaq Barrett comes in to help out there, so they should be all right with that. Jordan Poyer, Saran Neal, both come from their rivals, the Buffalo Bills. And then Kendall Fuller comes in on the back end as well with Jalen Ramsey. You got Cam Smith. Kader Kohu was very quality as a slot corner for this team. Nick Needham's still there as well. So, they're in an okay spot on the back end of this defense for me and this defense entirely, realistically. So the biggest hole, no question for me, is on the offensive line for this team. And that's where they have to go, in my opinion. They absolutely have to go offensive line. And it's no questions asked that they have to address the middle of this O-line. For Tua to be successful, you have to have a strong interior for me. That you have to. And they do not even close right now. So this pick is going to be a bit of a shocker to a lot of people. It is the least sexy pick you can possibly think of, to be honest. But it's an absolute need. It's a name that's been rising. He looked great at the Senior Bowl. Had a good combine. He met with this team multiple times. I believe there was a combine visit, pro day, and top 30 visit with this player. Makes the most sense. Again, it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be a bit of a shock. It's Jackson Powers Johnson is the way I think that the Dolphins go. They can start him at center right now. They can start him at guard right now and let him learn center, whatever they want to do. Aaron Brewer can play center for this team if they need it. But either way, he's going to dramatically improve the interior of this offensive line. So I think it makes too much sense, again, with a team like the Eagles right there. They just lost Jason Kelsey. Cam Jurgens is there, but they love to pick those center guard swing type of guys. So he could go there. And the Cowboys for sure are where, a lot of people have Powers Johnson going. So I don't think that the Dolphins can trade back and get him. I really do not. So I think they just have to pick, reach on a center sort of thing, guard center interior guy. So that's kind of the direction I think that the Dolphins go. They're a little bit of a wild card though, that's for sure. So I haven't seen a trade in a little bit, but we'll get there. Let's see what happens here. Eagles are on the clock, 22nd overall. Do I think they trade? Howie Roseman likes to wheel and deal. That's for damn sure. I'm not so sure that they make a trade here. Maybe, if anything, I could see them trading up in this draft for sure. I could see them trading up. And definitely in the second round here, they got 50 and 53. Maybe they move up to the top of the second round. They have a lot of options, and Howie Roseman's a wheeler and a dealer, but I don't think they trade anywhere in this instance and where they're at right now. Looking at their team, they're fantastic. The reality is for the Philadelphia Eagles, they could walk into the NFL season right now with their current roster and they'd be fine. They would absolutely be a threat to win this division with what they have on the roster right now. So these are kind of all luxury picks, realistically. They could use some help on the offensive line. Tyler Steen, they're hoping can be their right guard. Matt Hennessy comes in and can help out there as well. So they have some quality, offensive linemen. I don't think it's enough of a need that they have to use a first-round pick on an O-line unless it's right tackle and he's the future guy. But again, he won't be starting this year, most likely, unless it's at right guard. Wide receiver is a position of need for sure. But again, I don't think it's they could go with Brian Thomas Jr. here for sure, Adonai Mitchell for sure, and just make that offense kind of complete. But I don't think that's the direction that they go. The defense is a fantastic spot with the exception of the back end of this defense. Darius Slay, big play Slay, wrong side of 30. James Bradbury was a liability last year, again on the wrong side of 30. Kelly Ringo's there. He's a quality contributor, but I'm not sure he's a starter. Same with Zach McPherson, Josh Jobe, and Eli Ricks. Sure, they can all be contributors, but I'm not sure they're starters on this defense. CJ Gardner-Johnson comes in. They traded up last year for Sidney Brown, who might not be that guy. Reed Blankenship, again, quality contributor, solid special teams player, but I'm not sure he's a start every day, play every down defensive player on this team. And then there's Avonte Maddox, good nickel player. That's all fine and good. So it's got to be the back end of this defense for me. So there's a couple guys that they like, and they could go a couple different directions. So we'll nail it down at corner because that's where I think they go for sure. Who do they pick? I think it's between these top three right here, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Nate Wiggins, and Cooper DeJean. And I think for me, it's between Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry. So there's tons of connection between both. And what kind of is the deciding factor in this for me is the versatility that Cooper DeJean would add to this defense. He can also be your kick returner with the new kick return rules. Who do they have now returning kicks? Yeah, Britton Covey, sure. But I think that Cooper DeJean would be better off in that role. You can also play him at safety. You can literally play him anywhere. He can be your nickel corner. He can be an outside corner. He can be a safety, free safety. He can do whatever you need him to do, including play on special teams and return kicks. So I think that's the differentiator here. For me, it's between Kool-Aid and Cooper DeJean, but I think they settle on Cooper DeJean. So Philadelphia Eagles, 22nd overall, make the pick. Pretty easy. He helps that defense right away. And there you go. We're moving on. So now, 23rd overall, we got Jeff in the chat. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Appreciate you hanging out with me on this one. Hopefully you like the picks that I have happening here. So Minnesota's 23rd overall. This general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, he, I think, likes to make picks. I think he likes draft capital. I think he wants draft capital. He wants picks. He's a cap guy. He doesn't want to spend a ton of money on even, Kirk Cousins. So he doesn't want, he'll have to on Justin Jefferson, obviously, and he will. But I think he likes to make picks. I think he likes rookie players. I think he wants draft capital. So if we look at what they have 23rd overall. There's a couple missing spots here. They don't have a second-round pick next year, which I think is huge. In his head, I think is huge. 2 fifth-round picks, no 6th, no 7th. So they're only sitting there with 5 picks next year. Right now they're at, 7, we'll call it 8 picks, right? 9 picks, whatever. They have some capital this year, but they need to add some picks next year, in my opinion. So what do? I don't think it's so much what they do. I think that there's another team that is seeing what's going on. They're seeing a fall for a certain position and a certain player specifically. And Jeff, you're on it. you're on it. We're on the same wavelength here. Just makes too much sense for me for the Buffalo Bills to not trade up here. I think that we heard Brandon Bean in his latest, he had an interview about what they're trying to do and everything like that. He said, we don't need, a number one wide receiver. We don't need a number one guy sort of thing. But if this scenario plays out and this player drops, I don't think they can resist. It's similar to what they did with Dalton Kincaid last year, where they waited, he fell, they pounced on it, traded up a little bit, and made the pick. So I think the Bills see what's going on here, and they go ahead, they trade, what do I got? 28th overall, 128 overall. Next year's either Minnesota's own second next year, or they trade the Buffalo's. They would probably be happier to trade their own, to be honest. They are probably going to think that they're going to finish higher than the Vikings next year. So they say, hey, we'll give you our second round pick, 128th overall, which is a 4th round pick and a 2025 second. I think that's all I have them trading. Yeah, for 23rd overall and a 3rd round pick in 2025. So I think that gets a little closer. The Vikings move up next year. They get an extra pick in this year's draft. Then they have back-to-backs with 28 and 29, 128, 129. And then they have a lot of guys on their board. They have a lot of needs. They have a lot of holes. They have a lot of guys on their board. So they're kind of happy to move back. So I think it makes tons of sense for the Bills to go ahead and move up. And then it's no secret. It's going to be for a wide receiver. Again, Jeff was kind of alluding to it in the chat, which I'm happy. There's some people that agree with me. It's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. for me. He's the number 4 wide receiver in this draft for me. It's not Xavier Worthy, who I have already gone, but it's Brian Thomas Jr. And I just think that he can walk in for what they like to do. He's what they wanted out of Gabe Davis, right? He's the wide receiver that they wish Gabe Davis could have been. That's how I see them looking at Brian Thomas. Wins 50-50 balls. He can do everything you need. And the fact, with them saying like, we don't think we need 100% need a wide receiver 1, that's exactly what they're going to get out of Brian Thomas. And if you think this is a slide, I agree. I think that this is a fairly substantial slide, like probably close to a 10, a 5 to 8 pick slide for Brian Thomas, in my opinion. But if you look a few years ago, CeeDee Lamb slid to 15th overall. Justin Jefferson slid to about this range, 23rd overall. So if those guys can slide in a deep, the biggest reason why is it's a very deep wide receiver class, very, very deep. So I don't think there's going to be teams chomping at the bit to trade up and get ahead of other teams to draft wide receivers in this class. So I think it falls into their lap. It makes tons of sense for both teams. Bills move up. They draft Brian Thomas Jr., and the Vikings get that draft capital back that they're after for next year and a little bit down the road in this year's draft, where they can potentially package some picks and move up into the 2nd round, 3rd round, that sort of a thing. They have some ammunition, which I think the general manager of the Vikings really likes to do. So there you go. Brian Thomas Jr., 23rd overall. Bills trade up, and there you go. All right. Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. 24th overall. They're all in, meaning they're all in on letting Dak Prescott play out his contract and see what they can do. I think they definitely need another weapon on this offense. That's for sure. I think they need some help on the defense. That's for sure. They need lots of help on this team. This team is honestly falling off a little bit. And they're certainly falling off within this division, in my opinion. They're falling behind the Eagles, even though they just won the division last year. But they really did a whole lot of absolutely nothing in free agency. So you got Eric Hendricks coming in, but he's getting a little long in the tooth. He's been, he's a quality vet, sure, but he's not really making any huge difference on your team. He can lead this defense and call the defense. That's all fine and good, but he's not a massive difference maker. And then Royce Freeman. Oh, you got Snoop Connor. Wonderful. Not making too much of a difference here. So they have an absolute black hole at running back, in my opinion. If Dak's not going to be their guy, I guess Trey Lance is going to get a shot. We'll see how that works out. Offensive line, it's in an okay spot. We'll see with Tyler Smith playing left tackle. I think he can absolutely get the job done at left tackle, but he said, oh, I'm fine at guard. I'm fine at playing guard. So does he want to continue playing left guard? I'm not exactly sure. They'll have to sort that out, before the season starts, but they need some competition. So looking at this defense, again, certainly need some competition. Trayvon Diggs comes back. Hopefully he's fully healthy. Deron Bland, but that's more or less it. Jordan Lewis can play, but he's getting a little bit older. So they definitely need some help on the back end of this defense. Micah Parsons is fantastic. DeMarcus Lawrence can still get the job done. Mozzie Smith has to take a step forward. Osi Odigizua has actually been really good for this team. But the biggest hole on this entire team is on the offensive line. They lost Tyron Smith, who wasn't exactly there anyways in the last few years. But the left guard and center spot is just absolutely, completely black hole. So, so they need some help. They need a player that can play one of or both of those positions. So who's it going to be for me? Makes too much sense. If Powers Johnson was there, I think they would go that route. But I think Graham Barton's their guy. He can come in, he can play left guard, he can play center, obviously not right guard. That's locked down. That's all fine and good, but he can play left guard or center this year. He can be a first-year rookie starter. It just makes too much sense. It's an easy pick. There you go. Plug and play. Helps your offensive line. He's going to fill one of those two positions in need. And there you go. Make it easy on yourselves. That's the way I see the Cowboys going. Graham Barton. Moving on, 25th overall, we got the Packers. So the Packers are on the board. They're in a very good spot. Bit of a surprise playoff team last year. I actually thought that they had a very good shot to be a playoff team last year, and they got there. Good for them. Wide receivers, fine. They obviously have just tons of options, tons of similar players. So that's certainly, maybe they draft a guy at some point, but it's not going to be in the first round. Rasheed Walker, I don't know how he fell to the 7th round. He was a quality player, in my opinion, a couple years ago, and now he's showing it. He might be their left tackle of the present and future for this team. Solid player. I like that. And then they bring in Andre Dillard, who can be your swing tackle, maybe left guard in a pinch. He can start somewhere if need be. And then Elton Jenkins can move around this literally anywhere on this offensive line. Elton Jenkins can play. Myers is there. Sean Ryan, he can play, I think. Zach Tom, he can definitely play. And Royce Newman's there, sorry. And they do need to address this offensive line. I think they will at some point. I don't think it will be in the first round. So looking at this defense, this is a fantastic defense, to be honest with you. I think it's in a really good spot. Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. Preston Smith's getting a little long in the tooth, but they drafted Lucas Van Ness last year. Kingsley Enabare is there. Sure, he can help get the job done. Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark is very quality. And then TJ Slayton's there as well. Linebackers are in a great spot. I like Isaiah Duffy a lot. I don't know how he was a 6th-round pick, but I like him a lot. Quay Walker, 1st-round pick. I'm happy there. Eric Wilson can still do some good stuff. But it's the back end here. And the big problem with this Packers defense is staying healthy. Eric Stokes and Jair Alexander in the last 3 seasons for the Packers, one of or both of them haven't been on the field at a lot of time periods for this defense. So they have to address it. Keyshawn Nixon has been a fantastic surprise for this team. Kick returner as well, and nickel corner plays great. That's a great get. Carrington Valentine and Corey Ballantyne are quality depth guys, but they're not guys you want to rely on, especially when you think you're going to be a Super Bowl playoff contender, right? The Packers know that they are. They're hoping they're a Super Bowl contender, but they know they're going to be a playoff contender. So you got to help out the back end of this defense. And the reality is what's left at corner. So it's Nate Wiggins or Kool-Aid McKinstry is where we're looking at for me. And just the connections that I've seen and the reality of who I think a better player is going to be, I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be the better player. He started for Nick Saban's defense, which is not an easy defense to just jump into as a true freshman out of high school. True freshman, he was a starter on this defense at Alabama. That's not easy to do. So that's a huge differentiator there for me. The speed is close, and he ran it with a friggin' broken foot. Kool-Aid McKinstry. He ran a 4.47, I believe it was. Yeah, Nate Wiggins ran a 4.3, but to be honest, it's pretty easy to find speed at corner at this point. It's just who's going to be the better player. And for me, Kool-Aid McKinstry is the better player. So the Packers get thirsty for some Kool-Aid at 25th, and they go ahead and take McKinstry there. Makes sense. So rounding out the end of this draft here. We're getting there. Appreciate everyone that's sticking with me through this whole thing. Hopefully you enjoy the content. Hit that like and subscribe button if you don't mind. Helps me out a ton. But we're going to move on. 26th overall. 26th overall, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And where do they go? Another surprise playoff team last year. I actually picked them to win this division. I actually picked the Bucs to win this division. And I kind of got lucky with that. It was a bit of a, I don't know, just hunch, if you will. But they won the division last year, bit of a surprise. And there's a lot of holes here still, though. Like, they do have a quality team, but there's still a lot of holes. The offensive line can use some help, especially right here at left guard. Everywhere else, they're okay. Ben Bredesen and Logan Stenberg can kind of help at that left guard spot, I suppose, and they can address it at some point. I don't think that's where they're going to go. Beyond that, that offense is in a quite good spot. They've got talent everywhere. They've got skill players everywhere that have been contributors on this team. So I don't think offense is the way to go. Looking at the defense, Jordan Whitehead comes in. Winfield got franchise tagged. Tavir Thomas comes in. He can play for sure. Christian Izien, he can actually be a quality nickel type corner. Bryce Hall comes in from the Jets. He can play. Not saying that you want to rely on him. Jamil Dean and Zion McCollum, it's okay. They could certainly use some help, but I don't think that's where they're going to go, just because I don't think the talent's there. Maybe Nate Wiggins is on the board here for them, but I think there's another player that makes way more sense for what this defense likes to do and where they've gone in other recent drafts that didn't work out. So Shaq Barrett is gone from this team. Joe Tryon Shoyinka has just not worked out at all since being a first-round pick in 2021. He has not worked out. Anthony Nelson can be an okay contributor. Yaya Diaby was pretty quality last year and kind of came on strong at the end of the season, and hopefully he takes a leap. And you can't particularly rely on Randy Gregory realistically. You just never exactly know what you're going to get from Randy Gregory. So he's there, wonderful if he works out, but you need some reassurance, I think. And you got to get after the quarterback, especially if you're a playoff team, which they hope to be again. So they got to get after the quarterback. So what are they going to do? There's a guy here that has been compared to a former teammate of his, just an athletic freak. Chop Robinson just makes too much sense. He's been compared to Micah Parsons. If you get literally half of Micah Parsons, if you get half of what Micah Parsons is, this is a steal. That's a quality pick right there. So for me, it just makes too much sense. Fire him in there, kick Joe Tryon Shoyinka to the bench as a rotation type guy. You got Yaya Diaby, and now you got Chop Robinson in there. I think that's a match made in heaven. They're connected, obviously, visits and whatnot. So there you go. Makes tons of sense. Outside linebacker, he can get after the quarterback. I love it. So there you go. Chop Robinson to the Bucs at 26. So we got the second pick for the Cards now, 27th overall. This is a team that could move up, but I think they just have too many holes. Why could they move up? Because they have this pick 27 and then 35 right here. That's pretty juicy to move up in the first round. But we'll see. Again, they have tons of needs. They have tons of holes. They got to fill these holes instead of trying to accumulate, quality talent, which they could do. You got to take some swings, get some players on this roster, fill out your roster. So I think they stay here. Maybe if anything, they can trade up, but they're certainly not going to be trading back. I'll tell you that much. So they obviously picked Marvin Harrison Jr. You got to help out this offense. That's kind of where I'm at. This defense is kind of full of dogs a little bit. And Jonathan Gannon showed last year that he can get the best out of players. He can get the best out of, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So we got Sean Bunting Jr. who came in. They definitely need some help at corner. That's for sure. So Nate Wiggins could be on the board here. They got to get after the quarterback. That's absolutely true. Zaven Collins, hopefully he fully buys into being an outside linebacker and learns how to rush the passer a little better, develop some more moves. BJ Ojulari's there. Victor Dimukeji's there, sure. And then Jesse Luketa and Tyreek Smith from the Seattle comes in. Dennis Gardak has actually been a quality rotational piece, but they need help there for sure. They brought in some guys up the middle. So these players, Bilal Nichols is quite quality, actually. So is Justin Jones. LJ Collier's there. Kairos Tonga. They have some options there. They have some bodies that they're okay. You got to address this offensive line for me. Jonah Williams he came in 2-year contract. They kind of paid him, but they're not married to him. They're really not. But I think they'll be fine with him here. And then Paris Johnson, their first round pick last year, obviously they're committed there. But up the middle here is mediocre at best with the center and right guard. Left guard is a hole. They're going to have to add and address the position. And I think that they go there here. It just makes too much sense with who's on the board. Local kid. He can step into left guard right now. Jordan Morgan. Step into left guard right this second. And if Jonah Williams does not end up being their left tackle, or you move Paris Johnson to left tackle and Jordan Morgan becomes your right tackle, my point is you have some options with this player. And obviously a local kid makes sense for what they want to do. So there you go. That just makes too much sense for me. It's a plug and play starter at left guard, and then you have options down the road. So Jordan Morgan, 27th overall to the Arizona Cardinals. Just makes too much sense to me. Easy click. There you go. Back with the Vikings. The Vikings have been moving around. There's been lots of talk about what the Vikings have done and are going to do in this draft. So where do they go here? They went with Byron Young early with their 11th overall pick, traded back with the Buffalo Bills. What do I think they do? I'm not going to make you wait too long. I think that Bo Nix is the click here. I think that Bo Nix is better than Michael Penix. There, I said it. A lot of people like Michael Penix. I get it. I don't. I really don't like the way he throws the ball. He has a weird little hitch. And to me, he's late a lot. If you watch his tape, for me, he relies on his arm strength way too much. I think that he just tries to zip the ball in, fit it into small holes. And I just personally do not think he'll be able to get away with that at the NFL level. That plus the injury history, that is a concern. You don't get more healthy as you get older, right? So I think that's a huge concern personally. But more importantly, I just think that Bo Nix is a better fit for this Kevin O'Connell offense. I really do. I really think that you can get exactly what Kirk Cousins was and has been for this offense. I think you can get exactly that out of Bo Nix. Honestly, I do. Long-time starter at college. He's the most experienced player and quarterback in this entire draft. And again, I think he just fits this offense better than Penix at the end of the day. So that's where I think they go. They go ahead and get their quarterback of the future. He can have a battle and a competition with Sam Darnold. And that's the other thing, whether it's Penix or Bo Nix, they don't have to start this year. That's for sure. They can start Sam Darnold and just let Bo Nix or Michael Penix come on a little slower, learn and all that kind of stuff. And then, towards the end of the season, get a couple games under their belt. And there you go. They get some experience, and then they're a starter moving forward. But that's kind of the direction I think they go, is Bo Nix over Michael Penix. Yeah, I actually don't like. You got Jeff in the chat. Appreciate you being here all draft, man. I appreciate it a lot. Vikings fan, obviously. They take Nix here. You like Penix? I really don't, actually. And I think they take Nix as well. I just think they like him more, and I think they can trade back and get him. So I think they know it. I don't think there's any team really chomping at the bit to trade up for Bo Nix or Michael Penix for that matter, at least not yet for Michael Penix. But there you go. That's kind of how I feel about it. So yeah, moving forward, 29th overall. We got the Detroit Lions on the clock, had a very good draft last year. They need to add some pieces for me. They could go two different places for me, and it's in the trenches regardless. So it's either on the offensive line. They lost Jonah Jackson to the Rams. They brought in Kevin Zeitler, who can absolutely still get the job done, but he's getting long in the tooth. Graham Glasgow is kind of a swing guy. You're okay if he's starting, but you're more loving that he's coming in as a depth piece right here, and he can fill any of these spots as a rotational center. He can play any guard position. He can play center if need be. And then they're good with Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. So the offensive line could be on the board here, but I think they need a big body that can get after the quarterback. So realistically, there's no edge rusher for me available that can get after the quarterback. So what do? I think that they go up the middle, and it's Johnny Newton. there's connections here. He's relatively local. He's met with the team, and he might be better than Byron Young at getting after the quarterback up the middle. A proper like defensive tackle, Aaron Donald type. I am most certainly not at all comparing Johnny Newton to Aaron Donald. Don't get that twisted. But an Aaron Donald type, he can give you maybe a third or a quarter of what Aaron Donald was, and you'd be happy with that. So he is kind of a straight pass rusher up the middle. He needs to improve at, stopping the run, tackles for loss, that sort of a thing. But I think that stuff can be taught realistically. And I think he helps out this defense right away. I think they need that big body up the middle. Ali McNeil's good. DJ Reader is quite good as a run stuffer. And Onwuzurike, that's the problem there. He's had some serious health concerns. So I think that's the way they go to help this defensive line and to help the pass rush. So Johnny Newton, 29th overall to the Detroit Lions. So we're almost done. We got 3 more picks. The Baltimore Ravens are on the clock. 30th overall. What do I think the Ravens do? Obviously, number 1 seed in the AFC last year. So best team in the AFC, right? What do they got to do to get back there? For me, it's certainly not going to be wide receiver. They lost Odell Beckham Jr. That's fine. They brought back Nelson Aguilar. They need Rashad Bateman to take a step. That's for sure. Zay Flowers is a very good young player. They can address this wide receiver room. And if anyone's on the board, it's Ladd McConkey right here. Obviously, Todd Monken, Georgia Bulldog, offensive coordinator. It's Ladd McConkey, if anyone, at wide receiver right here, but I don't think that's where they go. The defense is in still a quite good spot. They get the best out of the players. They could use maybe a player on the back end, in the secondary. They could use a player. I think they're okay other than that. Odafe Owe, David Ojabo, hopefully can stay healthy. Kyle Van Noy comes back. Trenton Simpson and Roquan Smith are very good linebackers. Madubuike comes back. Broderick Washington's there. Michael Pierce, big old body up the middle, run stuffer. And Brent Urban, they've gotten the best out of him, that's for sure. So where do they go? For me, if they want to stay competitive, if they want to keep that spot that they're in and keep Lamar Jackson upright, help the new addition Derrick Henry, in the running game, they have to address this offensive line. And really, it's like right here, left guard, or right here, right tackle. You do have Patrick McCarry, who could play anywhere. He's another one of those guys that can play literally anywhere on this offensive line. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I think he will have to start probably right here at left guard for this team. And you're happy with that. You're fine with Patrick McCarry starting for sure. So you plug him in there. Ronnie Stanley's getting old, long in the tooth. He's been injury prone. They got to look at replacing him soon. So how do they do that? You started on the other tackle side to start this year. So where do they go? Again, it's got to be tackle for me. There's a couple guys on the board that they can kind of choose from. Amaris Mims is there. Tyler Guyton. A couple other guys, the Yale, Kieran, I can't say his last name, my apologies. Kingsley Suamatai, I'm probably butchering his name too, or they could wait in this draft. But for me, it's Tyler Guyton. Mark Andrews, former Oklahoma player, they've been in contact. Lane Johnson has been mentoring Tyler Guyton, so a lot of people are mocking and think that Tyler Guyton will go to the Eagles, which is possible, but I think that's a little bit early for my liking for this player. So I think it makes more sense for him to go here, 30th overall, plug and play on the right side, and maybe, he played right tackle in college. Maybe you can swing him over to the left side if need be. But you can address that in further, later next year's draft, free agency next year, that sort of a thing. You can address it. But he's a plug and play right tackle right now. And I think he'd give them the best chance to keep doing what they do and what they have been doing and stay on top of the AFC. But we'll see how it works out for them there. So almost wrapping it up. We got 2 more picks. 31st overall, the San Francisco 49ers are on the clock. What do they need to do? There's huge concerns, obviously, with Brandon Ayuk. I think they get the contract done. If you remember a couple of years ago, there was a very, very, very similar situation going on with Deebo Samuel. What did they do? They got the deal done. and they made it work. He's still a 49er. I think they do the same thing with Ayuk. I do not expect him to be traded. That's for sure. Ayuk, T. Higgins, they will both be playing on the Bengals and the 49ers, in my opinion, this coming season. I think they will eventually get a job done. So there you go, or deal done. So there you go. I don't think wide receivers on the table realistically for this team. They address the defense, and it's pretty scary, to be honest with you. This defense is fantastic. They brought in Leonard Floyd, who can absolutely get the job done, especially across from Nick Bosa. Yatir Gross-Matos, who's a former second-round pick, I believe, for the Carolina Panthers. He comes in. Drake Jackson, second-round pick for this team. So that's very quality. Juwan Hargrave's still there. Malik Collins comes in. You got Jordan Elliott coming in. That's fantastic. That's in a very good spot. Obviously, Dre Greenlaw tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl. Very unfortunate for that game specifically, but he should be back eventually. And then they've got Flanagan Fowles, who comes in and he can, pitch in. Devondre Campbell was signed. Fred Warner is one of the best in the game. So they're all right there at linebacker for me. Charvarius Ward had the best season of his career last year. Ambry Thomas is still there. Rock Ya-Sin comes in. He can get the job done. Isaac Yiadom comes in. He can pitch in. And then Lenore is there. Jair Brown, Fuanga. They got some pieces here. Eric Harris. They got some pieces here on the back end. The defense is all right. Realistically, for this offense and for this team to keep functioning the way that they need to, it's offensive line. And it's right here. Colton McKevitz just is not that guy. He's all right as a swing tackle. Maybe you can kick him inside if need be. Trent Williams is still fantastic. Jalen Moore, sure, he can be a rotational type of a guy if need be, or a swing tackle. Aaron Banks has been good. Brendel, sure, enough. And John Feliciano, sure, they can hold it down, I guess. And Spencer Burford's there. That's okay. But right tackle's got to get better. So if you can kick Colton McKevitz to a rotational depth piece, then that's exactly what I look to do. You got to be better at right tackle for me. So bit of a dancing bear. He's met with this team, top 30 visit, that sort of a thing. He's met with them. It makes sense. Again, he's a right tackle, dancing bear type of a player. It's Kingsley Suamataia. I can't say it. I'm butchering his name, and I apologize, but that is going to be their first round pick, I think. It just makes the most sense. Plug him in at right tackle and then kick Colton McKevitz to the bench. He can plug in for whoever. That's just the direction that I think they go. So it might not be that player. It could be Amarius Mims, but I think Mims falls out of the first round just because injuries are a concern for him and experience is a concern. Yes, he has all the intangibles. He has the body, blah, blah, blah. He's a physical freak. I get all that, but I think Mims is going to fall out of the first round for those two reasons, the inexperience and the injury history and concern with him. So there you go. Now, final pick. We're almost there. We're almost done. Thanks for sticking it out, guys. I'm very happy with the episode. I love all the work I put in. It makes sense to me. We'll go through all the picks in a second, but we'll wrap this up with the final pick in the first round, the Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, 32nd overall. Let's not wait too long. It's going to be a wide receiver. So it's there's Ladd McConkey, who is a fantastic fit. There's Troy Franklin, who I don't mind, but I don't think he's as good of a fit in this offense. Keon Coleman's there, sure. But for me, even Xavier Legette, I don't mind in this spot. But I think it's going to be Adonai Mitchell. I have Adonai as my 5th overall wide receiver in this class. There's concerns that are not related to his actual talent. Like, he is an absolute freak, physically, jump ball guy. You can put him on the outside, which is what they absolutely need, and he can be that red zone jump ball guy. It's just there's some concerns with maturity and his willingness to kind of buy in and play on the field, sort of a thing. There's some concerns there, which is why I see a bit of a drop. This is not a crazy drop. Patrick Mahomes likes his Texas boys and his Texas wide receivers, that's for sure. So There's another one, but Ladd McConkey's certainly on the table here. I guess Troy Franklin, I suppose, but for me, it's between Ladd and Adonai Mitchell. And I have Adonai Mitchell ranked higher. I think that what he can do physically, and Jesse Gross, my guy, what's up, buddy? Need that big body. Yeah, that's exactly what they need in this offense. They need a big body guy on the outside. They don't have anyone that's even close. Justin Watson is the closest, that they have to filling that need. So that's what they do. It makes the most sense to me. Again, could be Ladd McConkey for sure, but I think Adonai Mitchell's the pick here for the Kansas City Chiefs, 32nd overall. And there you go. That's the draft, boys. So let's blow through it here. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, but we got Caleb Williams, first overall to the Bears. I like that. James Daniels, number 2 to the Commanders, makes sense. Drake May, number 3. Marvin Harrison, number 4 to the Cardinals. We got our first trade. The Raiders trade up for J.J. McCarthy at 5th overall. Malik Neighbors, number 6 to the Giants. Joe Alt, number 7 to the Titans. We got Rome Odunze with the Jets coming up, 2 picks to get that difference maker on offense with Rome Odunze. We got the Rams trading up to 9th overall with the Bears. The Bears get some draft capital. The Rams get one of the best offensive players in this draft with Brock Bowers. The Falcons are happy to move back. They get Dallas Turner still. Byron Murphy, number 11 to the Vikings. Tons of connection, makes tons of sense. I like that pick a lot. Jared Verse to the Broncos, helps that defense. You got JC Latham to the Chargers, helps the right side of that offensive line. Talisi Fuaga replaces Ryan Ramczyk for the Saints. You got us a bit of a surprise here. Xavier Worthy, 15th overall to the Colts. I think that's a bit of a shocker. I like that pick. There's connections. I like it. Troy Fautanu to the Seattle Seahawks. Again, local kid, makes tons of sense. Tyrion Arnold, cornerback, first cornerback off the board to the Jaguars at 17. Quinyon Mitchell to the Bengals at 18. We got Liatu Latu to the Bears at 19th overall. Olu Fashanu to the Steelers at 20th. Jackson Powers Johnson, 21st to the Dolphins. Cooper DeJean, 22nd to the Eagles. We got Brian Thomas with the Bills moving up a few spots to trade with the Vikings and get Brian Thomas Jr. at 23rd overall. Graham Barton, 24th overall to the Dallas Cowboys. Kool-Aid McKinstry, 25th to the Packers. We got Chop Robinson, 26th overall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Local kid, Jordan Morgan to the Arizona Cardinals at 27. Bo Nix, the quarterback of the future for the Minnesota Vikings at 28. We got Johnny Newton up the middle for the Detroit Lions at 29. Tyler Guyton starts right away at right tackle for the Baltimore Ravens at 30th overall. And then 31, San Francisco 49ers, Kingsley Suamatai, I think, probably butchering it, but he comes in to play right tackle for them. And then we got Adonai Mitchell wrapping up the first round. Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, makes tons of sense. Thanks, guys, for coming out. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comments, in the chat. I appreciate all the chat. I appreciate everybody that came out. Hit that like button if you don't mind on the way out. As far as the next day, I could see some trade-up scenarios with obviously Michael Penix is still there. So I could see some trade-up scenarios, maybe right here with the Patriots. Maybe the Patriots trade out of that 34 and you could potentially be with a team like the Broncos if they're willing to trade next year's first to go up and get Michael Penix. That could be a situation there that we see, because I do think that the Patriots need to add draft capital, especially in next year's draft. They need to start accumulating some capital and some picks and some assets. So I could see something like that happening right here. Or some other team if they want, a Michael Penix to compete or give them a shot. I don't know, maybe the Saints right here, Giants, I guess, are on the table there. Something like that a team can trade up. Even the Dolphins would be a sleeper kind of team to move up and get Michael Penix, left-handed quarterback, Tua, left-handed quarterback. You could say he's just a better version of Tua. That's possible. So I could see something like that with the Patriots trading down right here and someone coming up to get Michael Penix. But we'll see. And then Amaris Mims is obviously still there. There's not really too many crazy fallers. I guess you could say Mims, but I just don't think he's talented enough. And the injury concern is what really concerns me there. You don't want to draft an oft injured offensive tackle, and that's exactly what you'll be getting with the Maris Mims. Nate Wiggins, that's a bit of a slide, but back into the first, early second, sure. Troy Franklin, and then Ladd McConkey is probably the biggest surprise, to be honest. Zach Fraser, you could see go in there. But yeah, Michael Penix, there's tons of talent still there. I think JT Sanders is going to be a second round pick as well. He's realistically the number 2 tight end, no questions asked in this draft class. So yeah, man, that's how I see it going. Put in a shitload of work for this mock draft. I don't take this lightly. Again, I only put one out every year, and this was it. So I put in a lot of work. I do a lot of research, and hopefully it makes sense. And yeah, man, I appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate all the chatter again. Hit that like button if you don't mind. I will be back. There might be a slight delay with the next episode. I'll be drafting again. We'll be doing underdog best ball drafts like we always do. Once the Best Ball Mania 5 opens up after the draft. But until that opens, I'm probably just going to prepare and take it easy until best ball season kind of starts up again. And then every Wednesday night, as always, we'll be drafting 9 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. Turn on that notification bell because sometimes we go live, on the weekend or a random Tuesday, Thursday, that sort of a thing might go live. So turn on the notification bell, hit that like button if you don't mind. Thanks for coming out. Like I always say on Off the Schneid, if you're afraid to be wrong, you'll never be right. I took a lot of chances, and hopefully I was right on a few on tonight's show or today's show with the mock draft. Appreciate you guys coming out. We'll see you next time. Enjoy the draft. Less than a week. Let's go. Our teams are about to change.